Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Welcome back to CBSN. Vice President Harris is seeking out diplomatic solutions to help refugees crossing the U.S. border from Central and South America. The vice president is set to visit Mexico in June. Today, she spoke with Mexican President Manuel Lopez Obrador. The two sides emphasized immigration in their virtual meeting. Vice President Harris says she's hopeful they can reach a solution that works for both nations.
Together, we can make progress and we can create and build a sense of hope for the people of the Northern Triangle for the future.
Her conversation with the Mexican president comes as deportations by Immigration and Customs Enforcement fell to the lowest monthly level on record. The total number of deportations dipped under 3,000 this April for the first time. According to the Washington Post, that's even as illegal border crossings remain at an all-time high. I want to bring in Antonio Garza in San Antonio now. He served as U.S. ambassador to Mexico from 2002 to 2009 under President George W. Bush. He's currently counsel to the international law firm White & Case. Ambassador Garza, welcome. It's great to have you with us. What do you believe Vice President Harris needs to do to negotiate a deal with President Lopez Obrador to help alleviate the refugee process?
Well, I think it's going to be some variation on what we've been doing along the border for really for many years now. The surge you're seeing has been characterized as a crisis, but it's really part of a continuing challenge that we've seen going back to the late 80s, 90s, and certainly throughout the 2000s, 14, 16, and 19. You get these increases. And it's due largely, I think, at this moment to the deteriorating situation in the Northern Triangle in Central America that was exacerbated by a couple of hurricanes. So you have people moving out of Central America through Mexico and making alternately asylum claims or simply trying to enter the country without documents. I think Vice President Harris's objective today in her meeting with Lopez Obrador was to get more support on the enforcement side from Mexico. Certainly the Biden administration would like to see more Mexican enforcement troops, their National Guard, at the southern border to limit the initial exodus of people from Central America. And then secondly, on the Mexican northern border or the U.S. southern border, those individuals that are being deported from the United States under Title 42, that they would be allowed to remain in Mexico under some variation of the migrant protection protocols that were in place during the last administration. I think it's interesting, Tanya, because the objective of the Biden administration, and they've had many meetings with their counterparts in Mexico over the course of the last 100 days or so, has been to broaden the agenda with Mexico. In the sense, moving it beyond solely a transactional one as relates to immigration to include security and trade. And you've seen a number of meetings kind of lay this sort of foundation for a broader agenda. Conversely, in Mexico, Lopez Obrador seems to want to limit the agenda and not talk too much about trade or the investment climate or some of the challenges that U.S. businesses are having in that country. Not too much on security either, quite frankly. There's been really deterioration in the level of cooperation. And solely talk immigration, where I think Lopez Obrador feels he has the greatest leverage in his dealings with the United States because it is such a hot political issue for the Biden administration. So there's probably things that can be done, but they're simply variations on what we've seen done in the past.
So do you believe that Lopez Obrador then is using the issue of immigration as a tool to leverage, sort of negotiations in other realms?
I think that's a good point. I think you've touched on something that is very much a part of his mindset in dealing with the United States. You saw, for example, earlier today, he talked about a diplomatic note that was being drafted with respect to U.S. Agency for International Development funds that were committed to a anti-corruption non-governmental organization in Mexico, and how this was U.S. involving themselves in domestic issues inappropriately. I characterize that as a bit of a brushback pitch, essentially saying, listen, I'm going to work with you on immigration, but I don't want to hear too much about trade, rule of law, anti-corruption initiatives in Mexico, and the issues as relates to security. Again, he'd like to see kind of formal cooperation, but certainly not that level of integrated cooperation that we had seen in years past. So, yeah, I think he's using this both tactically and wanting to stay on the issue that he feels he has the most leverage with the United States.
Very interesting perspective. You know, obviously Mexico is hugely strategically important to the U.S., you know, on many levels, not just immigration. How would you characterize the U.S.-Mexican relationship right now under Lopez Obrador?
Well, I think it's formal, but not terribly ambitious. As long as we stay focused on immigration, we really are kind of selling ourselves short in terms of a broader North American initiative in terms of competitiveness. I wrote last week about a concept that characterizes ally shoring. One of the things that the pandemic revealed is the risk associated with very flat supply chains and our over-reliance on China. I think there's a real opportunity of working more closely in North America and certainly with Mexico to address the pandemic issues as specific as, you know, vaccine distribution, getting the Mexican economy back and growing. Last year they had about an 8.5%, 9% contraction. So how they address that pandemic is very essential to their growth. Secondly is building out the implementation of USMCA and protecting investments in Mexico so that there can be more job growth and economic opportunity. You know, a big part of this surge that we've seen in the last handful of weeks has been Mexican males. I mean, we focus on Central Americans and the families and the unaccompanied children, but a big part of that surge were Mexican males. So I think there's some real opportunities in North America that are being missed by simply focusing on the immigration component of the relationship.
Yeah, we read that piece of yours in Mexico today on ally shoring, and you know, it's so interesting because it does bring up all of these different aspects and different ways that the U.S.-Mexico relationship can, you know, be copacetic, can be mutually beneficial. Do you think that the Biden administration is poising itself well diplomatically? I mean, what do you know about the diplomatic corps that's down there working with Mexico right now? Do you think that they have this sort of long-term strategy in mind that you'd like to see implemented?
Yeah, I think the administration has sent some very clear signals that they would like to broaden the agenda. And in terms of the level of communication with the Lopez Obrador administration, it's very high. It's not as personal as the last one. It's more institutional. So you'll have, I think, a much more forward-leaning administration with respect to trade, with respect to security, with respect to immigration. But a lot of what we're going through right now, Tanya, is that dance in the early stages of a new administration in the United States. And we can't lose sight of the politics of Mexico right now. They'll have elections in June, where 15 governors will be up for election, and the entire 500 member lower body of their legislature, of their federal legislature. So for Lopez Obrador, playing a bit of a nationalistic card is probably tactically good politics in the short term through the June elections. And for the Biden administration, putting the pieces in place for a broader agenda, which they've been doing, I think is smart as well. So a lot of positioning going on in Mexico, the politics, in the United States, I think a longer term, more ambitious view of North America. But until we get June behind us and continue to build on those relationships, it's hard to imagine much movement in the short term.
All right. Well, Ambassador Antonio Garza, thank you so much for sharing all your insight with us into our southern neighbor. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanya.